Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to another edition of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Jack McCurry. Anthony Joki is not with us tonight, but I brought in a great guest to talk some NFL draft, some Senior Bowl. He's probably the hardest working man in the Browns Twitter game. It is Mr. Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. Jeff, how you doing, bud? It's been a while.
It's good. Busy. Amazed that people are still listening after the 2019 regular season. But I guess hope springs eternal. I guess it's kind of where we're at Browns wise. And, I was hoping for a quieter, easier January. And, obviously what I'm learning the more and more of covering this team and covering this franchise is expect the unexpected, and it is never dull.
Right. I heard you last week that you cracked the top 200 again on iTunes, and you were you were the non-playoff team to crack the top 200. So congrats on that. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing considering where we're at as a franchise, but always great to see you get the recognition.
Yeah, well, it is kind of funny when you're up there with, three teams that are in the, NFC or AFC championship. And then it's like, which one of these doesn't belong?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I heard you say like it was the Packers, the 49ers, and the Chiefs. And then you're like, oh, the Browns. And I'm like, yeah, I just wish we were playing the Chiefs last Sunday instead of not playing.
100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, or you could have looked at it this way and that could have been a 70-0 massacre. So look, it's not that far off the product. You just need, as always, and we've always talked about is you need the right bus. You need the people driving the bus. I'm not so sure the roster is the biggest of the question marks anymore.
No, not at all. I was talking to someone last night about it. I said, if we can get everything aligned, which seems to be the key word this offseason, we're not that far off from being a playoff contender by any means. But, this week, all eyes are on Mobile, Alabama. It is the Senior Bowl. I know Pete Smith's down there covering things for Browns Maven as well as Locked On Browns. Pete, Jeff, I'm sorry. The one thing I always wondered about the Senior Bowl is why do they bring more attention than the game? It seems like once we get to the game, like no one cares about it. No one really watches, but like all eyes are on these practices.
Well, part of it also is you keep in mind that it is an all-star game within itself. So within the all-star game, look, there's some guys saying, man, last thing I want to do right now is get hurt. You're going to always have those guys that motor never turns off. You talk about the guys, who will play a game on Sunday and are upset the next time you hit the practice field. What do you mean we're not hitting? We're not hitting yet? I want to hit. And there's always those guys. But what it is, you're looking for a lot of, individual, you want to see these linemen just take pass pro reps. And the thing is when you get caught up in the team aspect of it, it's hard to see function as a unit. These guys are only going to be together, for a Tuesday practice, a Wednesday practice, a Thursday practice. Friday essentially is just trying to install some semblance of special teams, unless you're the Detroit Lions, because apparently they care about that. So, the individual part of it is, the biggest one. It's the moneymaker, and why the practices everybody knows what it's there for. Look, you got Bill Belichick there for a second straight day and eyeing up certain positional groups, whether it's D-line, whether it's offensive line. That is the pressure. The game is the fun of it. It's the reward of it. It's, it's nice to see some individual performances that come from it. But like you take the quarterback play, for example, if each team's got 4 quarterbacks, you're getting a quarter a play. So you're not going to get much to go with. It's going to be how you competed these routes. And the thing is also, it's like the learning of it, though, because, it's all right. This is what it looked like on Tuesday. And, you have a fair amount of guys who look good on Tuesday. But now it's, all right, now we sat down. You got to watch your film. The coaches got to watch their film. They're going to offer you up a couple of critiques. Now, let's see you go out there tomorrow and do this. And, I gave you 2 easy tips to use. Are you going to use them tomorrow? If you don't, and you get beat the same old way, you start to get into that, can he take to coaching? Does he process information quickly? So that's where the practices become more of it. And, the game, it does, have a game feel to it, an all-star appeal to it. I still like watching the game. My thing is don't watch it with a scouting eye. Just watch it. And, you'll still get to see, maybe a tremendous catch by a wide receiver or a great play by a linebacker, chasing a screen down 15 yards down the field. A pass rusher absolutely just whips somebody with a gorgeous move. the game is kind of like, it's kind of like the whipped cream and the cherry on top. The nuts and bolts of the week certainly happens between Tuesday and Thursday.
Unfortunately, there were some notable names that were sidelined from the start of the Senior Bowl. Prince Tega Wanogo from Auburn, Trey Adams from Washington, Ashton Davis from Cal. Were you looking forward to hearing about these guys? I know they've been, favorites in mock drafts, since, Browns fans have been diving into them. I was looking forward to seeing what maybe Wanogo or maybe a Trey Adams could do, just because the Browns are definitely in the offensive tackle market.
Well, the thing with Trey Adams is this is his MO. And, apparently he was a little bit of a hammy that, he came up while I was working out. And keep in mind, some of these guys are a lot further away from playing football than maybe the LSU kids and obviously the Clemson kids. So you get to a certain point where you're not doing so much football stuff as you're already kind of into training for, and you're basically working on running that 40, getting the highest vertical you possibly can. So once you start to get back into football type of things, some guys it's not as easy. But you've got to protect the assets. And that's why these guys go through a full physical when they get there. And if there is even the tiniest bit of red flags, and, Prince Tagan Wanogo, he was one of them where it was like, well, I just played through this entire thing. But God forbid you get out there, you're not 100%. And, say in the case of Prince, it's an ACL now. You're talking 3 rounds maybe of draft stock. It becomes a serious, serious issue. It's, hey, I would have loved to see you this week. I still got your entire career on film. I can watch every down you ever took. It's better than the risk of the kid getting a more significant injury. You get a chance to meet with them. Obviously Christian Fulton's down there as well. You get the chance to meet with these kids, talk with these kids, get at least an initial meeting, whether or not you want to meet with them further when you go to the combine. It stinks and it's kind of difficult and it hurts the process. And this is also where Jim Nagy's gone with this a little bit different. Phil Savage used to love the small school kids. And the cool thing about the small school kids is they're never pulling out of these games. These kids are begging for this shot and to get this opportunity. Where Jim Nagy's gone more with a Power 5 approach. Yeah, the rosters look great when we first get them. And then by the time you actually get to the week of the Senior Bowl, you see the amount of turnover and things of that nature. Does it hurt the overall product? Do I blame Jim Nagy for doing it? No, you try to bring as much spotlight to your game as you can. At the end of the day, it is a business. But with that, you're going to have to expect more withdrawals. And some of these kids that you offered in October, maybe in October, they were viewed as, 4th round picks. Maybe now what the feedback they're getting is, hey, you might be a top 50 player. So you may have accepted the game, thinking, man, I really need this game. And now in your current state of affairs, 2 months later, wow, I don't need this game as much as I thought when I originally committed. You know what? I played a bowl game in January. I don't have much time to get ready for the combine. My body needs to decompress a little bit. It's just not the best thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, even though he didn't have an injury, like, Nagy announcing that Burrow wasn't going to attend the Senior Bowl. Like, and then there was criticism behind that. Like, did anybody really think Burrow was going to do it? Like, what more does he have to prove? He's the number 1 pick in the draft. Like, why risk anything going down to Mobile and risking an injury or anything it just didn't make any sense. But with Trey Adams, Jeff, like, you talked about, that's his MO, he has the injury history. Is he worth the gamble of spending a top 100 pick despite, the injury history? Like, if, say, he falls to the 3rd round and the Browns were able to get him with one of those 3rd round picks, is he worth the gamble because of his history with injuries?
I wouldn't say for the Browns he is in their current situation. You're looking here with, a 2nd round pick or maybe even either one of your 3rds that you could possibly get a starting right tackle, a starter. That's the way this class is shaping up. Now, here's the problem. If the Browns invest in Trey Adams and say, all right, I think we got our starter here in the right tackle, and these things start flaring up, and now you're talking about back, which led to knee, and you can say it was a training thing, but hamstring. Hamstrings sometimes happen when a back is a concern. For me, the juice isn't exactly worth the squeeze with Trey Adams, just because this is what's been the deal, and for them, if they think they can get a starting right tackle with that pick, the injury flags are going to be big. If you're a more established team, if you already have a right tackle that you think, I may only have a year left, I may only have 2 years left, either contract, age, whatever the situation is. I'll take the gamble now. Does he hold up? Maybe I found my guy early, or I can address it again in, a year or 2 years from now. Teams like New England, the more established teams. But if you need these guys to be starters, you'd rather take this advantage, at least on the guy who, where the injury history is clean. And look, I mean, with injuries, it's tough, obviously. Trey Adams could go on to play, 10 years in the league. We don't know, but you got to take the information at hand. For me, I'd say maybe in the fourth at 105, maybe. I'd have to see what I did before then. But for me, it's a real tough to get on board with him, especially with, the fact that we are talking about a really deep and really talented offensive tackle class.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the deep offensive tackle class and a guy that is creeping into the first round. And Jim Nagy said it in his introductory press conference Monday at the Senior Bowl. He's talking about Houston tackle Josh Jones, who, if anybody has paid attention to the draft all year, the Browns have been scouting him probably quite heavily throughout the process. Many look to him as a potential pick in the second round. He might not even get there. I mean, and he's having a great Senior Bowl so far. Really good in pass protection, as your buddy Pete Smith mentioned on Twitter earlier. Where's your stance on Josh Jones right now?
Well, here's the interesting thing is Josh Jones, and he kind of fits the MO of what this offensive line, or at least from what these gentlemen have done in the past and what their track record states, is this is the kind of guy they're looking for. They don't, it's okay if you're a bigger body, but they want athleticism. They want guys who can move. Josh Jones is a nice mix of both. His pass pro is good, and he can move well. As Pete always talks about, the ass. You got to be able to sink. And if you got that ass, you can sink. Josh Jones can do that. You'd like at times to see like a Quentin Nelson type of, hey, just go ahead and finish him. Like you had him on the hook and essentially you threw him in the water type of thing. Go ahead and finish him and guess what? You're going to go back here and we're going to do this again in 30 seconds and we're going to beat you down again. Just needs a little bit more of that finisher, that, almost jerk type mentality, but everything you're looking for. And the way he's being talked about now, and obviously, he gets the stage here now where obviously the underclassmen don't. And, there's guys who are probably best suited for the right side. Unless, and he says he thinks he's going to do extremely well at the combine. And when guys usually say that, you usually take some credence in it because you don't want to write, a check that your ass can't cash, so to speak. Josh Jones, I mean, from what I've heard, just even a little bit from the guys down at Mobile, is they wouldn't be stunned if it was top 20 or top 25.
So that would make it, 5 offensive tackles in the top 20, top 25 now?
That's fine. That would be, that'd be 5. Yeah. I mean, and it's where we're going. And look, you look at it, there's teams that either need young quarterbacks or the next quarterback, or there's teams who have the young quarterback, and those teams, need to make that investment to protect said investment. And we know which one Cleveland falls into.
Absolutely. Since we're on the topic of offensive tackles, Mekhi Becton out of Louisville has become the hot name at the position. And, Daniel Jeremiah dropped his first mock and had him 4th overall in his first mock draft. And I think that kind of surprised some people. But, following Stephen Thomas, Pete Smith, you guys, I've seen the mock drafts where he's been going at 10 now. And this is a guy that's rising, and I'm using air quotes when I say that. But it seems to think that the scouts around the league have had Becton a lot higher than the media experts have.
I think the thing is, and when you watch him, I mean, and the first thing you look at is, I mean, I think, and this is the misconception, because I've had, some people come at, everyone sees the height number, they see the weight number, and those are usually the ones who say, oh, he doesn't move very well. For me, it's like, okay, I don't think you've watched. Guy was a high school basketball player. He does move well. The guy can get 350 off the ground and dunk a basketball. His feet, completely 100% yet? No, absolutely not. I mean, almost none of these guys are. But what you see and the power and the rawness, and there's times where it's just one side of his body and one arm, and he's just throwing guys. He's got, the natural built-in strength. If you're going to be somebody that says, wow, he is close to 350, we're about to give him, $20 million guaranteed. I don't want this guy going to look like, I don't want him to go from a house to a hotel. I mean, yeah, I can understand those concerns. You're going to want to get into that better and see how much of that is good weight, how much of it is sloppy, how much of the fact that he's only, a baby at 20 years old, because a lot of that factors into it as well. But the player himself, and, we were taking, some heat because it was like, oh, well, no, you trade back because you're just taking a tackle at 10 because you need one. No, the guy can play. And, if you can get a 20, 21-year-old left tackle and you think he is that good, now you think about it, what do they always say? Oh, you pencil a man will be there for 10 years. He's only going to be 31. He's only, so he brings everything. And those who don't think he moves well, they're not watching good enough. He's not going to finish at the bottom of these athleticism tests. He's probably going to finish middle or higher. He moves well. He jumps well. All he needs is just more time, more playing time. Does he right off the bat, maybe because of his size, am I worried about whether or not he's a Cleveland fit? You have to look at it as, is there a box? I mean, but, if you like big athletic people who can destroy people that get in front of them, and that's what you want at your left tackle, yeah, he fits the bill. And I don't care that he may carry 15 pounds more than may be ideal.
Yeah, and we have a pretty good offensive line coach in the fold now, so I wouldn't be too worried about what they plan on doing with Becton if the Browns ultimately were to pick him at 10.
Oh, not at all. I mean, if it comes down to it, and look, and here's the thing. I mean, you have 4 potential names, and there's ways you can do this if you want to go left side first or you want to go right side first, because I would not rule out going right tackle at 10 after talking with Sage Rosenfels, and he talked about how much the Stefanski offense likes to roll the quarterback out to his strong side. Baker does do that very well. It's one of the things Baker excelled on a lot in 18 that we didn't see much of in 19. So it could make sense to go either way. And you figure, you do the math. It's, obviously 9 guys go before. You do the math. Obviously 4 offensive tackles. There's going to be a couple defensive players. The quarterback's names. You should have one of these 4 tackles who all look really darn legit available to you at 10.
Javon Kinlaw is obviously like the top guy down there in Mobile. He plays defensive tackle. Obviously, the Browns could use some depth up there on the defensive front. I seen the video clip of him yesterday and was jaw dropped the way he manhandled that offensive tackle. I really didn't know too much about him just because I haven't dived completely into the draft prospects, much unlike you, Steven, Pete, among others. Tell me about Kinlaw, and if the Browns somehow weren't to go offensive tackle at 10, would he be a guy you'd strongly consider at that spot?
I think Javon Kinlaw is the type of guy that every one of the 32 teams have interest in. You love a story like this kid, a kid who literally came from nothing, times of sleeping on the floor, no stinking lights on in the house. Number one, it breaks your heart that anybody's got to go through it, let alone a child. And then, you hear about, him going to JUCO, and first couple of days he was there, Jack, he didn't know the food was free. So he wasn't taking food because he thought he had to pay for it with money that he did not have. So now you see the exuberance in his eyes and the way he talks, like he is truly, like he doesn't know where he's going. He hasn't been drafted, but he already knows he won the lottery. Like he should be on the path to a good life for him and be able to help out his family and get things right. The personality is infectious. Then you get into the fact he's strong as hell. And he's got these first 2 steps that are amazingly quick. Everybody always like, Aaron Donald. Let's all chill with that. And you talk to any one of these D tackles, and it's the funniest thing. It's like, who do you like to watch? Every one of them. Aaron Donald. Of course, they want to be Defensive Player of the Year. They want to go sack the quarterback 20 times a year. But, everything about the kid. And look, would it be crazy if he goes at 10? Probably on the grand scheme of thing of what the Browns' needs are. But, analytics could also mean we're sticking to our board and going best available. The guy's a player. He's got a motive. The question is going to be is the production wasn't as great as you'd like to see. I mean, a lot of it was wow and him busting up the play, but, not essentially recording the stat on the play, which sometimes skews, statistical production. He's one of those guys. A little bit more, help would be, with his pass rush. The question would be, at this early stage, is he coming off the field on 3rd down? And you look at the Browns, and obviously with Sheldon, obviously with Miles, with Larry, Olivier Vernon, let's see. But even still, would he be on the field on third down? So, for me, if you think he's good enough and he'll be on the field on third downs, yeah, that's okay. If you think he's just a big hoss run blocker destroyer, if he's only going to get 1 and 2 downs, then maybe 10 is a little rich. But I think that I don't see that kid not stopping. I don't think the fact that he will finally have a bed, he will finally have lights on, he'll finally be able to eat. I don't see a personality like that with this kid that's going to just go off into the distance. He seems to be the real deal as a person and a player.
Who are some of the other names down in Mobile that you're going to be keeping an eye on and have kept an eye on throughout the first couple days of practice and through the rest of the week?
I'm always looking at the wide receiver group. And it's weird. If you took me back to the day before the Browns made the move for Odell Beckham Jr., I felt better about where the Browns wide receiver roster was that day than I do right now where the Browns wide receiver roster is. And you have Odell Beckham and you have Jarvis. One of the things that made Baker so great in 2018 as opposed to 19 was he had confidence in everybody. And, I don't know if, it was the way it was game planned or, losing Richard, obviously Callaway's whole incident where now he was out there and Jarvis was barely practicing. Odell was barely practicing. So anybody he was throwing to on Wednesday or Thursday is essentially were the people he was not throwing to on Sunday. So, I want to fill back out that room with guys who can help out. One guy that's sticking out for me is Van Jefferson from Florida. His father was Sean Jefferson, former NFL wide receiver, now a coach. He runs the routes perfectly. And he's actually a pretty thick and put together dude. Like but he runs the routes like these Andy Isabella types. And, he gets, he whirlpools the defensive backs. His footwork is that strong. He's got thick, strong hands. The ball hits him. He holds them. Great hands catcher. He's a guy I think would be a great, great addition to Cleveland. The way things are going, maybe a bigger Rashard Higgins type of thing, bit more body to him, but he runs clear, concise routes and gets his hands on the ball. I think you could put him in there with an Odell, a Jarvis, with a tight end, whatever backs in the backfield. And I think it would be a really, really nice setup in the red zone.
I know Anthony would kill me for not mentioning this guy, but what's your thoughts on Colin Johnson out of Texas? Anthony has had like a draft crush on him for quite like the last year or two. I seen he had an impressive drill on Tuesday. What's your thoughts on him? And since we're on the topic of wide receivers, how about KJ Hill at Ohio State? And even though he's not at the Senior Bowl, Benjamin Victor, who was in the Shrine game last week.
Oh, well, we'll start with Victor. Victor is interesting with the long arms and the hands approach. And this is kind of what gets happen with Ohio State in the way it is now. Look, when you are one of these top 3-4 schools in the country, you can tell these guys till you're blue in the face that, yeah, you're getting playing time. But you're still drafting 2 or 3 5-stars at the same position, a class before. So you don't truly get to see a full work of art of these guys. Victor and Hill both fall into that. KJ Hill's having a great week this week. The routes are good. Body isn't perfect, which is fine. Benjamin Victor brings size and length to this wide receiving core in Cleveland that Odell and Jarvis do not. If I were going to ask for one here for probably for where you're going to get him, I think I'd want Victor over Hill. I just think he does a little bit more as to what they would need. Either one of them would probably be a fit. Colin Johnson, here's the thing. And the weirdest thing is that the dude's got hands smaller than my 13-year-old daughter, which is just absolutely strange how a guy that big can have hands smaller than 8 inches. I don't know if somebody cut off the tips of his fingers or whatever. Moves well, natural catcher. He's had a good week so far this week, and he's not just the bigger receiver that gets downfield. He can work over the middle a little bit more. I was actually stunned he actually stayed at Texas for this last year. I didn't think he needed to one bit, but it's a nice group down in Mobile. And here is the craziest thing is you look at any mock draft, you look at any rankings, the top wide receivers aren't there. And you even go even further where you say, what if, Jamar Chase from LSU was draft eligible this year, even though he was only a true sophomore, he would probably still be the best in the class. It's an insane group. I mean, for me right now, if I can find a way to get one free agent wide receiver, into the fold, you still have DJ Montgomery. You've got Ratley. You've got Hodge. Both of those guys are probably going to make your roster due to special teams, most likely, especially if Prefer's here. And now Prefer's got some guys who trust him to do his thing. I'm just going to say, you know what? I'll take the best receiver that's available at 221 in the 7th round because there's like 60 of them. And there's no way all these guys are going to get drafted.
Would you say outside of offensive tackle that that's the deepest position group in this draft class?
It's not even counting offensive tackle. It is the deepest position group in this draft. It's insane. And there's, I mean, you talk about a guy like Tyler Johnson, whatever the reason, he couldn't even get a sniff for the Senior Bowl. I would take him in a heartbeat. I think he's got a lot of Rashard Higgins to him, runs his route correctly. Every route is the same. Doesn't, that's the one thing with Jarvis and Odell. Every now and then, like to throw in like that highlight head fake, which may or may not throw off, obviously when, Baker goes to release it, things like that, runs them clean, runs them right. This wide receiver, this is, everybody always talks about 2014. And, obviously I've said it, and that's been the benchmark for now. I think this class is going to blow that group away.
So, Jeff, as we stand now, and obviously it's late January, who is your number one guy for the Browns at 10 as things stand currently?
I'd be happy with any of the 4 tackles. And I think you could, it can work either way. Maybe with Josh Jones rising here, my ideal scenario, and you saw it with Daniel Jeremiah's mock. I'll tell you what, if I can find a way to get the 2 Georgia Bulldogs, if I can get Andrew Thomas for the left side at 10, I'd be fine with Wirfs, and I'll try to find the left tackle. I can go either way with that. But if I can get Andrew Thomas at left tackle, and I can get Isaiah Wilson also from Georgia, now both, obviously Thomas a junior, Wilson a redshirt sophomore. If I can get these 2 guys, and that's it, I'm going to go man. And the way, I'll man up with that group that I have. And the thing is, by the time we're ready to pay them more money, you're most likely talking about moving on from Joe Bitonio. You're most likely talking about J.C. Treader. So then I go from there where now I am going to build my offensive line from the outside to the inside. You can get those 2 kids who both move well, both weigh about 330 and change, both have height and length. They've played together. That would be my dream scenario. And, I'll figure out the rest from there because I don't ever have to worry about Baker again for at least 5 years.
I'm with you. Any one of the offensive tackles. While we're recording, the Draft Network is posting a mock, and they have Tristan Wirfs in a Browns uniform. Oh my God, that looks glorious! Like that's my number one guy right now. If we can get Wirfs in a Browns uniform, like that's my top target right now.
Oh, and if you want to talk about, and I talk about the Quentin Nelson approach or the just being a bully, just being an overall jerk, you go to the one, ripped from his bowl game. And, he's out pulling on a reverse, and you see the poor cornerbacks literally doing everything he can to, coil his body into the ground. And Wirfs like, nah, bro, sorry. Got to take you out, man. And, boom. And, imagine that's essentially that was that last kid's college contact getting 330 pounds of Christian Wirfs just absolutely rattling your teeth.
Yeah, he's a definite mauler. I really hope he's there when we're on the clock, but there's a whole lot to get to in the next 3 months. We actually did get a couple of questions, so we'll get to them. Cleve216 sent them both, actually, so we only had 2, but he says this is a draft scenario.
Oh, we're not getting to Andy's questions?
We are not doing Andy's questions. Sorry, Andy, I love you, bud, but we're not opening that can of worms tonight. Yeah, Cleve216, he put a draft scenario. He said Kinlaw or Simmons at 10, and then offensive tackle at, I think it's 41. And he mentioned Winogo, Taylor, Pert, Adams, Niang, or Josh Jones. Jeff, I'll let you have
that one more time. Repeat that one more time.
So he has us taking Javon Kinlaw or Isaiah Simmons at 10, which I already know your Simmons love based on listening.
I love the player. I just don't understand how it works, but go ahead.
Okay. And then he mentioned 5 offensive tackles. He had Winogo, Alex Taylor, Pert, Trey Adams, which I don't think he would be in play at 41, honestly, Lucas Niang out of TCU, and then Josh Jones.
Oh, well, I mean, if you told me your return could be, Javon Kinlaw at 10 and Josh Jones at 41, yeah, that would absolutely be ideal. But those guys, the problem is you've already, John Dorsey already punted on left tackle for 2 years. You tried the whole, Des Harrison thing. Look, you got Greg Robinson off the trash heap from an absolute colossal bust to a guy that some team will pay to be his left tackle, be their left tackle next year. But don't you owe this investment you made number 1 overall in Baker Mayfield? Don't you owe it a little bit more here? Look, I mean, you've already saved money on the offensive line by moving on from Kevin Zeitler. Wyatt Teller, his pass pro last year was really, really good. Where he fares in this new system, I am not so sure. And I understand it. He's, you talk about athletic offensive linemen, you're not going to really think about a guy like Wyatt Teller. But you save money on this offensive line. So that's great. But you can't go out and sign a free agent left tackle. And that's, some people come to me, oh, well, we'll just get one in free agency. You don't get good left tackles in free agency. It just doesn't happen. You're going to take the gamble again on what? On a Greg Robinson. It needs to be addressed. You need to do this for Baker. You need to do it for the rest of the offensive line. You need to do it for continuity's sake. You run the ball really well. Granted, Freddie didn't grasp that last year. So look, if there's days where the passing game just ain't working, invest in offensive linemen who can pass block and run block. You've already got the center who can do that. You've already got a left guard who can do that. You either have a right guard in Teller or Forbes maybe is more of a flavor of this new regime. You've got to help yourself out and finish off this offensive line. And yes, it's going to cost some money by paying 2 rookies, but it's not going to cost all the money. It's not. And like I said, when you move on from Joel, when you move on from JC Treader, if these guys on the outside pan out, then everybody else on the inside becomes a little bit cheaper.
100% agree. I mean, shoring up the offensive line, finding that franchise left tackle has to be the number 1 goal for the Browns this year. And I think you can definitely get one at 10. Cleve's other question was, does analytics favor a trade down, or would best player available at 10, or is best player available at 10 the better option given the abundance of good tackles? I mean, you pretty much just explained it in the last question, Jeff. Like, they need to go tackle. But what do you think of a potential trade down? Let's say Justin Herbert wows this week and he's on the clock at 10, and somebody behind us that needs a quarterback comes up with a mega offer.
Well, I mean, you look at it this way. If, you say if whoever's at 12 or 13, and I believe Daniel Jeremiah put 2 quarterbacks right in that range. If you say one of those teams come calling and maybe Mekhi Becton's still on the board, or one of the top 4. Maybe you really are 100% sure in Josh Jones. I'm not. This would be, everybody. I think when they think trade back, they automatically think, oh, you're going from 10 to 30. What if you go from 10 to 12, from 10 to 13? Then if you can, guarantee and do the math, all right, well, I'm getting one of these 2 guys anyway. I'm totally okay with that. I'm going to be able to address. Now I'm going to get an extra pick here. So, 41 doesn't have to be my right tackle. It gives you a lot more, fluctuation throughout the draft process. I'm not totally against it, but people just think because, with Sashi and his crew, that's the way they did it. No, Sashi and his crew said, we don't have anybody. So here's what I want. I want to make 25 to 30 picks in the next 2 drafts. That's what I want to do. Because guess what? If I get 25 to 30 guys in here, the analytics and the numbers say maybe 75% of them are players. Even if it's only 70% of them, I'm on the right track. It's a lot different when you've already got the beast as a pass rusher. You've got your quarterback. You've got your running back. You've got your corners. And you have a lot of these other pieces solidified. Everybody thinks analytics only applies and you only look at it that way. You're still going to take your current situation and you apply the analytics to how I can improve my current situation. Sashi's current situation was we have nothing. We have a great left tackle. That's what we've got here in Cleveland. We don't have anything of anything else. So how am I going to do this? I'm not going to go to the food store and buy 5 things. I'm going to go to Costco and buy 15.
Andy came in with a great question, so we're going to actually go with this one for sure.
Get out of town.
He said, can you guys see a scenario where the Browns not only take an offensive tackle at 10, but trade back into the late first round to snag another offensive tackle that slipped? I would actually love this. Say we take, one of the top 4 at 10, and if Josh Jones is still sitting there at the bottom of the first round, we know the Browns have scouted him heavily. I would not mind moving up from 41. We added some extra picks, trading Corbett and Avery away. You could trade future picks too. If Jones is sitting down there at the bottom of the first round and the Browns absolutely love him too, I would march to get him and pair him up with one of the big 4.
I do agree. Good question here. I don't know if we can apply, a strong definitive approach here yet. This could be something come, mid-March after free agency. We're like, oh yeah, by all means. Yeah. If you got to go move up to grab somebody. Yeah. But there's still some depth that's needed, and where 41 is now and looking where there's, 7 to 8 to 9 tackles I like, I think the odds favor I'm going to get one of them at 41. Look, a lot of things can change. We all know this. This would be, I'd like to revisit the, we'll do it again closer to the draft. And I'd like to revisit this then. It would also depend. Look, do you have some spare parts around here you could move where it's necessarily not going to cost you a ton of assets? Do I have a player that interests you, that maybe a player that, doesn't fare too well as the new regime comes in? Can I move up from 41 with a player and a future day 3 pick, things of that nature? But yeah, it's enticing. There's no doubt about it. And, if it's all to, and that was the biggest issue in 2019 was, and everybody, whatever you wanted to put on the defense, I get it 100%. But we all thought we had an offense that was going to go out and score 30 points plus a week. They didn't. So if this would be the key to getting us an offense that scores 30 points a week, then yeah, by all means, man, you got to go grab that.
Absolutely. This will be something that we definitely need to come back to as we get closer to the draft. But Jeff, I thank you so much for coming on. Like I told you Monday, we got to shorten the time between appearances here because I told you last time you were on was in April of last year, right before the draft. So I thank you so much because I know how busy you are with your podcast, man.
Oh, I appreciate it. And obviously, my world has changed so much just in September, and but even to say like April, oh my God, it doesn't feel like a year ago. It feels like 3, buddy.
Right. With that in mind, go ahead and plug everything you got going on Locked On Browns, your Twitter, all that good stuff, man.
Obviously, anybody can find me at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. The show itself at Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody for the support. You guys are fantastic with it. And for the most part here, the Browns podcast community, we've got a nice group. We can all sit down and break bread without getting on each other's nerves. And, Jack, to you and Anthony, wish you all the best, continued success. The new mic, perfect, bud.
Thank you. I got my whole little semi-professional getup over here, but yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. You're the best, man.
Always a pleasure, Jack. You know that.
Yes, sir. As always, guys, you can follow the podcast at The Dogland, which is also the name of our website, thedogland.com or dog.land. You can follow me on Twitter at JackMcCurry08. You can follow Anthony at AnthonyJoki, Joki. And with that in mind, as we get on out of here, go Browns.